Hello, folks. This is Doug. Just coming to you on this here Shabbat. I just wanted to kind of let y'all see what we got going on here. I'm sure a lot of y'all are in the same kind of situation. I think we've got probably about 14, 15 inches here, and of course it's cold. So I just kind of wanted to let y'all see. All right, truth seekers. Ready to kind of get started on lesson today. I hope all you folks have been blessed and had a good week, and everything is going as well with you as it can be in these times that we're living in. And with this big storm that we've had, I know even further south they've had it, and I'm sure north of here it's been, they instead of measuring it in inches, they've been measuring it in feet. I guess here, it's been, I reckon, 8 years since the last snow of any size like this has happened, and then it was 2 or 3 feet. It was a lot. But anyway, to get on to my lesson today, I want to talk to you about submitting to the authorities that are over you. And because there's a lot of people that are rebellious against authorities over them, and they rail against them and stuff, and we really should. We should submit to them because this is Elohim's will for us. Because you got to understand that He determines who rules and reigns over us. We can go vote and all that stuff, but it kind of says something about what our wishes are as a people, based on how we vote and stuff. But but ultimately, the leaders that we have over us is determined by Him. And I think He kind of allows certain leaders to be over us to kind of show us, how bad it can get. And then some leaders over us that are benevolent, and try to do the, good by the people. But, some that are malevolent and only have ill intentions towards us. And of course, I will show you in Scripture where this is bore out, not just in the New Testament, but also in the Old. And the other thing is that I will also show you the contrast of when we are not supposed to submit. And, and it's laid out in here. We know that, and we know that Yahushua, when they brought him the coin and it had an image of, of the Caesar on it. And he said to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and to render unto Elohim that which is Elohim's. So Yahushua was telling us the same thing, and it's also demonstrating to us the hierarchy of things. Because Yahushua said that the Father was the head over him, that Yahushua is the head over the man, and that the man is the head over the woman. So there is a hierarchy that He has established. And of course, He is, Yahuwah Elohim is at the top of this hierarchy. And so, when you read the story, which I'm going to bring out the scriptures in Genesis, I believe it's Genesis 41. Yeah, Genesis 41, of Joseph and the Pharaoh. And this is sort of an image or a type of the Father and Yahushua. It's a human type of the Father and Yahushua. And so you can get a lot. That's why a lot of the things that we see, they are types that represent. They are physical, worldly types that represent the spiritual Shamayim of Elohim, and it is a reflection of it. And as far as the hierarchy goes, so I want to start in Romans And again, you know, so many people, there's so much debate now about, you know, Paul, that he was a shield, you know, for the Romans and whatever. But if he's speaking something that's contrary to what Yahushua says, then yes, I would say, yeah, he's a heretic. But he doesn't, because he tells us over and over again. And I'm going to be reading from Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 10. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of Elohim. The powers that are ordained of Elohim. That is ordered by him. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of Elohim. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. And you'll see, even under these rulers like Nebuchadnezzar and Pharaoh, who, you know, they could be pretty nasty characters. But because these people that served them, like Joseph and Daniel, they and were, you know, they honored them and submitted to them. Then Elohim, through that ruler, blessed them to be elevated up to a high position. Okay, verse 4, for he is the minister of Elohim to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of Elohim, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are Elohim's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this, saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. And isn't that what Yahushua said? So if Paul's teaching something different, it doesn't appear that way to me. I mean, he's just kind of re-emphasizing exactly what Yahushua said. Okay, now we're going to look here in Jeremiah chapter 27, verses 1 through 11. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came the word unto Jeremiah from Yahweh, saying, Thus saith Yahweh to me, Make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck, and send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and to the king of Zidon, by the hand of the messengers which come to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah, king of Judah. Because these people are coming there, you know, talking to Zedekiah, and they all kind of conspiring and, you know, to go up against Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. And command them to say unto their masters, Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Israel, Thus shall ye say unto your masters, I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power and by my outstretched arm. and have given it unto whom it seemed meet unto me. And now have I given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant," which could mean slave or servant, either one. The word is elud, I think it is, in the Hebrew. "And the beast of the field have I given him also to serve him. And all nations shall serve him, and his son, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come, and then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him," Cyrus and them, whenever they overthrew Babylon. "And it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, that nation will I punish, saith Yahuwah, with the sword, and with the famine, and with the pestilence, until I have consumed them by his hand. Therefore hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which speak unto you, saying, Ye shall not serve the king of Babylon. For they prophesy a lie unto you, to remove you far from your land, and that I should drive you out, and ye should perish. But the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of king of Babylon, and serve him, those will I let remain still in their own land, saith Yahuwah, and they shall till it and dwell therein." And of course, after this, Jeremiah speaks to Zedekiah and tells him this, you submit to him and stop trying to rebel, because they were. Zedekiah was conspiring with Pharaoh and trying to get them to come down there and help him against Nebuchadnezzar. And of course, Jeremiah told him, if you'll submit, you'll be allowed to stay here. And they were those who did, that were allowed to stay. And there was a guy that one of Nebuchadnezzar's commanders made the governor over Israel. And of course, he was ultimately, through subterfuge and all, was killed. And he was warned about it. He was warned that this guy's coming to kill you. This guy Ishmael was coming to kill him, and he not only killed him, but killed all of his cabinet or whatever. And so, but he ultimately ended up being killed too. But for what he did. But you can see that he, for the ones who submit, he has mercy on them and allows them to stay in the land where they lived at. But for the ones that were stiff-necked and rebelled against the Babylon, against Nebuchadnezzar, they had no mercy. I mean, look at what happened to Zedekiah. He watched his two sons be killed right in front of him, and then had his eyes gouged out. And then he was led in fetters back to Babylon. So now we can see other examples of this, of submitting, like here in Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, verse 46, beginning at verse 46, when Nebuchadnezzar had his dream about the statue with the head of gold and the breast of silver and the stomach and thighs of bronze and the legs of iron and all that. And he's brought up there, and Daniel begins to tell him, what the dream is and all. And it says, and this is what happened after he's told him this and what it all meant. He not only told him what it meant, but he told him what his dream was, which was what his astrologers and soothsayers and all that could not tell him. They couldn't tell him what his dream was. It says, Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered and unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your Elohim is a Elohim of lowercase Elohims, and a Adonai of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldest reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So you can see, because Daniel always, whenever the eunuch that was over the slaves was told to feed all of the, because most of the king's people that he had in his court that were slave servants, he wanted the princes of the people he conquered to be in his court. And Daniel was of the priestly line, or of the kingly line, and so he was a prince. And so, and all of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were also too. They were all print of the princely line or whatever. But so whenever they were first taken in there, and the king had made an edict that the eunuch should feed them the best food and give them the best education in Babylonian culture and language and all that kind of stuff. What did Daniel do? He says, he does it in a humble and subservient way. He asked the eunuch if it would be possible for them to not eat the king's meat, but to have pulse and different kind of food. And of course the eunuch was afraid, and so Daniel said, let us prove it. If you let us eat this way and you come back in a month and we're not faring well, then we'll eat the king's meat. But if we're faring well, then you can let us continue to eat the way we're eating. And he did, because they wanted to keep their cleanliness. So Elohim honored it by giving them favor with this eunuch. And the same with Nebuchadnezzar, because they were subservient, they submitted, they didn't try to rebel and go against him. And so Elohim blessed them to be elevated up to high positions. And we can see this also with Cyrus, whenever Daniel came to him and showed him the scroll of Isaiah and where he was prophesied in there, Cyrus ended up elevating him there in Medo-Persia to a high position. And so, if you are a servant of his, if you are his, follower, if you follow Yahushua, and you submit and honor and fear our Elohim. Got a couple of cats going at it out there. Then if you are in this kind of a situation where you're under a tyrannical kind of government or whatever, then he will show you favor. And so the same with Jeremiah. The captain of Nebuchadnezzar's armies or whatever that were there, they found Jeremiah in a dungeon over there, and they let him go and told him he could go back with them to Babylon, or he could stay there, or he could go wherever he wanted to. He's free to go where he wanted to. Because the whole time he had been telling all these people around there to submit to him. He told the Edom and Moab and the Ammonites and all them, the other people around there, don't fight him, don't go up against him, but submit to him, or otherwise you're going to die by the sword and by pestilence and famine. And of course the people there in Jerusalem, it got so bad that they were eating one another, their children and stuff. That's just how bad it got, because they were under siege for like 2.5 years, I think it was. resisting Nebuchadnezzar, and of course and you can read about where Ezekiel, he's told to lay on his side, and he makes this model of Jerusalem and the walls of Jerusalem, and a siege ramp and all that stuff, and the walls being breached and all that stuff, because they would not submit, because as you see, the Father is saying that Nebuchadnezzar was his servant, because he uses these people to correct his own chastisement. He says, I chastise the ones I love. Chastisement comes through, a lot of times, through these same thing with Assyria that took the house of Israel into captivity. He says that Assyria, was his servant too. I mean, even though they had done a lot of bad stuff in their stuff, and they ended up being, brought down just like Nebuchadnezzar's empire under his grandson Belshazzar was brought down, because he didn't honor Elohim, and he was drinking out of the vessels that come out of the temple and stuff. But so he raises up nations and he brings them down. And if we rebel against these leaders and these rulers, then we're in rebellion against him, because he's the one that ultimately decides who is going to rule over us. But he does expect us, to submit to them, so long as it doesn't violate his law and cause us to sin against him. If it's something that is going to make us sin against him, then we do not submit to it. We don't do it. But if they say, hey, you got to have a driver's license, you got to have a birth certificate, you got to have, well, okay, have it. And don't rebel against it. You got these sovereign citizens and stuff like that are in rebellion against it. And, regardless of what you feel about these people up here, that are elected people or whatever, we're still commanded to submit to them, unless they're trying to get us to do something that is a sin. And of course, like with the old, I think that was a sin, to put something like that in your body. Because this is supposed to be a temple, where his Ruach is dwelling in it. So we're not supposed to be putting that kind of stuff that nobody knows what it is. And there's so much deception and lies surrounding it that who's to know what it is? So, but that's the only kind of circumstance, if they tell you to go out here and bow down and start worshiping, like here in Daniel, where, it says, and this is in chapter 3 of Daniel, and I would encourage you, as always, to read these chapters. Read them yourself. Read chapter 2 and chapter 3. It says that, therefore at the time, this is in verse 7, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up. Now, if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that Elohim that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, who we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace one 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And so, as you can see, here's an example of when you do not submit to the authority. Whenever they are commanding you to do something that is a sin against Elohim, you don't do it. Or a sin against your neighbor, you don't do it. But if it is, it's, even if it seems to be a frivolous or stupid law or whatever, if they put it out there, we're commanded to obey it. Unless it goes against what? Against Elohim, against his law and his commandments and judgments. Then we don't do it. But other than that, we are to submit to them. And we're not to rail against them. And then we can look here in Genesis. This is in Genesis chapter 41, and I just talked about it, 37 through 42. And of course, this is after Joseph had been brought up there out of the prison because he had told the baker and the cupbearer that they would be released, and one of them would be returned back to his position, the other one's head would be lifted off of his shoulder. And the one that lived, that I think it was the cupbearer that lived, and the baker that was killed or whatever, but he remembered because he had this dream and it was troubling him, and his astrologers, soothsayers, and all that stuff couldn't tell him they were trying to give him all kind of malarkey about what these dreams meant, and he knew that it didn't make sense what they were saying. And so the cupbearer was there, and he heard the discussion going on, and he says, he remembered Joseph. He was supposed to before that, but Elohim's timing's perfect. And so he said, I know a man that I was in, you had put me in prison, and he told me that I was going to be released and restored back to my position, and so it was. He can tell you what this stuff means. And so they brought, they cleaned Joseph up and got him presentable to come before the king. And of course, the way that my understanding is that their system worked there was you came to a certain step. There was a bunch of steps that went up to his throne, and you were allowed to come to a certain step, and he would query you, and if you, were able, and I'm sure Joseph was able to speak in the Egyptian language. And so when he realized he could speak in his language, then he told him he could come further up and, get closer to his throne. And so Joseph went up there and he interpreted his dream about the fat cattle and the sickly cattle and the fat ears and the sick ears. And so now it says, this is in chapter 41 of Genesis, beginning at verse 37. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such one as this is, a man in whom the spirit of Elohim is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as Elohim hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And you see, when you look at the story of Joseph, it's a remarkable story of redemption, where his brothers, because he had had a dream about them, that they were going to, about these, that there was this sun and the planets or whatever, or the stars were bowing down to it. And they, knew that, that there was 12 stars, and they were all bowing down before him. And they didn't like, they knew he was talking about himself, and they didn't like it. And so, they first they conspired to kill him, but then they decided, well, we don't want to do that. We'll just, throw him in this pit over here and take his clothes and tell father that some wild animal killed him, take his coat of many colors back. But I think it was Reuben that began to feel bad about it and said, look, we need to go get him out of there and bring him back. Well, by that time, some Bedouins or whatever, Ishmaelites, they had come along and they found him in there, and they got him out, and they took him to Egypt and sold him into slavery. And it was Potiphar who bought him, and ended up in Potiphar's house. Well, he always, when he was in, look at how he did in Potiphar's house. He was honorable and, faithful to Potiphar, even though his wife was, duplicitous and evil. Because you can see there's always Hasatan. He's always going to pop up in the scene, to try to, like with Nebuchadnezzar there, putting him to death for not trying to put him to death for not worshiping the golden statue. He always pops up and, as a way to test. He's the tempter. That's what he does. He tests people. And so he pops up to test people and test their character and their fidelity to Elohim. And of course, Joseph was his character was spotless. I mean, he had a spotless character. But it come from the fact that he had been through so much, adversity, and, so much different stuff had happened to him. It humbled him. And, it takes that sometimes to bring people to a place where they can be elevated to a high level of responsibility and power. They can handle it rightfully. And so he was elevated up there, but he showed respect and honor where it was called for. He could have, been rebellious and lashed out at Potiphar and, took his wife and, done all these bad things, but he didn't. He remained honorable and true to Elohim through the whole thing. It's just like, the Jews there in Babylon, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, that they remained faithful to Elohim. And they had been elevated up too, along with Daniel, to high positions, because they did what they were commanded to do. They submitted to Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. And so so we're supposed to do the same thing, folks. Because again, he's the one that determines who rules and reigns over us. And, they're his servant. They're doing his will. And when they don't, if they don't do what he has put in their heart to do, because we can look at during the Exodus, right? When Moses went before Pharaoh, and it said that Yahuwah hardened his heart. He said, "Oh yeah, I'll let you go. You can go out, to the mountain or whatever, and you can worship your Elohim, but you come back or whatever." And but then Elohim hardened said, "Oh no, you're not going. You're not going anywhere. You're going to stay here and continue to build buildings or whatever, make straw in the brick." And so you can see how that he is in control of the whole situation, and it's to bring about the conditions that bring his plan into fruition and to demonstrate his power. Because a lot of times, especially among unbelievers, they don't believe in him. Or if they do, they don't fear him. And so they kind of just do whatever they want to do. And he has to demonstrate his power to them, to humble them down a little bit. And he done that to Pharaoh. He humbled him, and he humbled Nebuchadnezzar when he got puffed up, and he's making this statue, and getting people to worship it, and is standing up, beating his chest, and look at what I've done. I've conquered all of this. And of course he had to be brought down a notch. He got puffed up. The tree was cut down. And so Elohim uses these, a lot of times what becomes tyrannical or even are tyrannical governments and powers, to chastise people who are rebellious against him. And he gives people all kinds of space to repent and turn away from it. And some do and some don't. I mean, in the case of, Jonah going to Nineveh and preaching to them, and them repenting, and the judgment being forestalled for, I think, 40 years before, I think that king passed away or whatever, his reign ended, and somebody else come up, and of course they went right back to being like they were, and of course he brought judgment and destruction on them. And so these people that are up here ruling over us, even if we don't agree with what they do, we can call out sin. I mean, we are to call out sin. We're not supposed to turn a blind eye to it. But if we were called before them or whatever, we have to show them the honor and the respect that is due to them based on their position. Because there is a hierarchy, and he determines who is in these positions. And, and I'll read to you here from the book of Jude. And this is Michael the archangel now, because he understands this about the hierarchy. It says, this is in verse 8 of the little epistle of Jude. Likewise, all these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignitaries. Yet Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, Yahuwah rebuke thee. So, and I've been guilty of it. I'm sure all of us are, because we see a lot of the insanity going on and all that, and we begin to rail against. But we're not supposed to do that. No, he tells us to pray for those who are in authority over us. that they might do what's right. And, one thing I've been noticing, I never was on any of these social media platforms. I never really cared for that stuff. But I did decide to get on, get the X app or whatever, because I just wanted to kind of keep track of some of the stuff going on. It's a good source of, you might say, independent social media journalism, because a lot of stuff comes up on there, very rapidly. You can see where things are going on. The mainstream legacy media, they're like a lumbering dinosaur. Used to, when I was younger, I remember seeing the news trucks, with their little satellite dishes on them or whatever, and they'd be at a scene and they'd be cameras set up, and, they would be, well, I don't even think they got them trucks anymore, because by the time they get there, it's already all over the internet, and there's all kinds of film footage and photographs and all that stuff about what was going on. Some of it that was actually being taken while the event was happening. It's not just like an afterthought. You come there and you see the mess and them cleaning it up. No, they're actually filming it while these things are going on. So you can see events that are happening in real time. Now, some of it is just stuff that's, garbage you don't even want to, look at. But same thing with like YouTube. There's a lot of garbage on there that I don't watch and I'm not going to. But but it's a way to see, and this is the amazing thing that's going on. And I believe it is all by design. I believe that we just went through a period of seeing just how bad things can get and just how deceptive and lying the system is. And now, like Yahushua said, I tell you, everything that is covered shall be uncovered. Everything that is spoken in the ear in secret shall be shouted from the rooftops. And I think we're seeing that right now. And you ain't never seen people just a kicking and a squirming and a squealing as loud as they can about misinformation, disinformation, because they're being exposed. The light is being shone on this dark stuff. And it's, like over there, I don't know how whether you people follow any of this stuff, but like what's been going on over there in England for the last 30 years. It is unreal. That guy, Tommy Robinson, they put him in prison because he was exposing it about these rape gangs and stuff. They call them grooming gangs. It's how they always try to make it sound not so bad, And when they did catch any of them, it was like, don't do that. And they estimate that as many as 1 million girls and women from the age of 11 on up have had this done to them by these Afghans and Pakistanis over there over the last 30 years. And the powers that be are covering it up. And, say what you will about Elon Musk. Again, you can see from Scripture that Elohim uses whoever he wants to use for whatever purpose that he wants to use them. And I believe he's using these people whether they don't realize it maybe, but they're being used to uncover and expose all this stuff. So it's got me thinking, man, and there's more and more stuff like this that's happening that makes me believe that, that we really are in the little season or whatever, the last days, the real last days. And that this is the opportunity for people to see this dichotomy, this contrast between what we had and what we're seeing now. That people were ready, that the Ruach has been poured out, and people's eyes are being opened, and the truth is being shouted from the rooftops, and everything that's been covered up is beginning to be revealed. And of course, the powers that were behind all that, because they are being exposed, they're like wild animals. and there's no telling what they liable to do. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, they just no telling. I mean, they could start a nuclear war for all I know. Of course, I don't want that to happen, but I'm prepared. I'm prepared for whatever happens because I am in Yahushua, and He is in me, and so I don't fear all that stuff. But I hate it for those people who are lost, even as they're seeing this stuff, and it's being revealed. There's still so many people that have their head in the hole in the ground like an ostrich. They cannot bring themselves to acknowledge it. And they continue like what's going in California right now with these wildfires and all this stuff. The leadership there has been totally negligent. Of course, it's not my place to call them out, but there are authorities that are higher than them that can call them out, and they are calling them out for their negligence and for and it's more to all that than meets the eye, folks. It's not just some people running around with, homeless people or whatever, running around with torches, setting stuff on fire. Now, I've seen, the stratospheric aerosol injection, them spraying incendiary metals like aluminum and iron oxide. If you take aluminum and iron oxide and put them together, it produces thermite. And you can go look up thermite and what that stuff is. That stuff is what they weld railroad rails on railroad track. They weld them rails together with thermite because that's the hardest steel there is. Railroad steel. That steel that they use to make railroad rails. That steel is incredibly hard, incredibly dense, and it takes really high temperatures to weld them together. And they use thermite because it burns, and I mean it just until it is completely used up, you cannot stop it from burning. You can't put it out. And so this is exactly what's going on. These firefighters out there and all saying, man, we've never, and I mean these are experienced veteran firefighters that have, because California is known for having wildfires and all that stuff. But they said that these were unlike anything they'd ever seen. The Santa Ana winds were higher than they've ever been, like 100-mile-an-hour winds. And that these fires were burning incredibly hot. I mean, to the point where everything that's left is powder. And it's from where they were, previous to when this happened, they were spraying that stuff like crazy out there. Up in up in the sky, the chemtrail stuff, but not only that, I saw some video footage of radar from out in that area, and there's this guy. I mean, that's all this guy does is follows, tracks Doppler radars all over the country, and he was looking at the area that is Area 51 in Nevada, and there was some kind of plume. And it was showing up green on the radar, and it traveled right down because them Santa Ana winds blow a certain way, and that it traveled right down to that area down there, and it was just a few days, and he showed right after that you could see these beams coming out from there where Groom Lake is, where Area 51. These different colored beams coming out of there, going in all directions. Man, I mean, it was it was unreal, and some kind of directed energy weapons that was igniting this stuff in some way. I mean, I don't know. I think that they have mirrors or something up there tethered to balloons that can be steered, and maybe even I think they're beyond the balloons. I mean, they still use some, but I think they have discovered how to levitate stuff, and have aircraft and stuff that can hover, just set, like airplane style aircraft that can just sit there like this here and hover because they're using anti-gravity or whatever, but it's just repulsion systems. But that this stuff is by design. And of course, a lot of people's talking about, these 15-minute cities, smart cities, that they want to move everybody into these cities and, basically contain you there. That's why they wanted to get rid of internal combustion cars and replace them with these electrics, because they know that they have limited ranges and they can control it. These cars are designed that they can take control of them, and they can drive you back and lock you in. They can lock you in the car. They can take control of it, and they can drive these cars wherever they want to drive them, drive you back to a police station or to wherever. And could even somebody nefarious with a nefarious intent could, kill you in it, run you off a cliff or something. I mean, think about that, folks. Most people don't even really think about that. Oh, that's cool, man. But they don't realize just how controlled, the cars that people can drive. That they talk about that the driver can just lay back like this right here, and the car is self-driving. So, and they could tell you, well, this is not a self-driving car, but you don't know that. I mean, it's all software and stuff and hardware. Well, if you look at one of these cars, I mean, they are marvels of electronic and control engineering, software engineering. I mean, they're just, state-of-the-art kind of stuff. You wouldn't know what you were looking at if you saw it, unless you were some kind of a software, engineer, somebody that keeps track of that kind of stuff. You wouldn't have an idea what you were looking at. I wouldn't. I mean, and I've got an electronics background, but I could, look at that stuff, start disassembling a car, and, because it's inside of circuits and stuff, inside of chips. So you can't really look in there and see what that chip is actually doing and what the software is actually doing, because software is information. You can't see information. You can only see the effects of it. So, that's... So, I mean, what they're saying is that they're deliberately doing this. They're deliberately burning these cities and stuff, like over there in Lahaina, and that they are doing this because these elites want that land, and to build them their own little enclaves or whatever, gated, secured enclaves, and move people into these 15-minute cities. And and I've even heard where like people like Bill Gates and them are building their own cities. These high, futuristic cities that are going to be for who else but the elite. And that's what they want that over in Lahaina. And there's a lot of people said they saw these beams and stuff over there in Lahaina. I mean, they saw a lot of, and right before it happened, there was a lot of that chemtrailing going on over the top of them, and dispersing these metals, these incendiary metals. Of course, I'm just speculating, folks. I got no way of knowing what they're actually doing for a fact, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that's exactly what's going on. And it's the same with these crazy storms like that Hurricane Helena, that and the people in North Carolina, they already talking about rushing all this stuff out there to California. But what about all those people in western North Carolina over there that that and still don't get the legitimate real numbers about how many people's died over, but I've heard it's been, in the tens of thousands that have died. And that they're still finding bodies. And but they're not doing, $750. You lost everything that you've worked all your life for, and all they're offering you is $750. I mean, and none of them had flood insurance because up in the mountains up here, they never had no flooding like that. I mean, they'd have a little flood here and there, a little flash flood or something, but nothing like that. Never. So people didn't have flood insurance. I mean, if you're up on the side of a mountain up here, why would you need flood insurance? Flood insurance would be for people who live down in a valley near a river or something, I mean, you would want it down there, but if you're living up here on this hill, but some of this water got, broke dams and stuff in places, and the water come down through there, and I mean, it took out the sides of the mountains and stuff. And up on them mountains, the rain coming down in such heavy amounts that it just water, come down the mountains. I mean, in a flood. So, but yet those people, and they've done everything they can to try to keep people from going in there and actually helping them. And of course, I've done a little bit of research on the fact that there's a lithium deposit there. Are they after that? So, you know, I'm not saying that people should rise up and revolt against the government or nothing like that, but people should make their voices heard. That this is wrong. These people are suffering, and if we're and they're not wanting to let people from outside come in there and help them. They resisted them and put up barriers to them. And they want to take FEMA wants to take the supplies and stuff that people were offering to bring and take, oh, well, we're in charge of this, taking care. See, again, the evil is being revealed and being, it's being exposed to what these people are really about. Now, are these people that are coming into office now really going to do anything about it? It remains to be seen. But again, they've been put in authority over us, and we're to submit to them unless they try to make us do something that is contrary to Elohim. This is sin against him. Then we don't do it. And I know it's hard when you see a lot of stuff going on, corruption and all this kind of stuff, but it's nothing new. I mean, that's I guarantee you in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom there was corruption and all that stuff going on in there too. Of course, they, if they caught people doing stuff, or if it was found out, they would be likely had their head chopped off or be thrown in one of them furnaces or something pretty quick. But it still didn't stop people from doing corrupt things. If they thought they could get by with it, and paying off bribes and all this kind of stuff to get favoritism and everything. And so let's see. I think I got one more little thing here. Yep. Of course, that might have been from. Yeah, that was from last week. I forgot to get it out of there, but I just kind of wanted to bring that up to people because. Again, like on that X or whatever, I hear a lot of these people, railing and all that. And I try to go in there, if I make a comment or something, I just try to, make a comment that that is scripturally based, that gets people to understand that, hey, maybe America needs to repent. Maybe its people needs to repent. And they need to quit looking to men to save them. The only real salvation and the only one that can save is Yahuwah Elohim and Yahushua HaMashiach. There is no other. And so I try to use it as a way to kind of, as another outlet besides this here, because I don't get that much visibility on here. But to try to reach people and to, because I see a lot of really vehement stuff coming out of there. And I mean, it's just like one thing I saw was about Amy Coney Barrett, the justice in the Supreme Court, where Trump and them went up there and his lawyers, and of course his lawyers are going to do what their job is. They're going to go up there and try to represent him and get him a favorable outcome concerning this trial he had. This it's political weaponization of the justice system. But a hush money case there where they charged him with all these felonies and stuff, and I mean none of it was a felony to begin with. They just cooked up a bunch of stuff. Well, he goes to the Supreme Court, and of course she was one of the ones that was in the majority, and she's supposed to be conservative and all that, but I just can't, people were just, she needs to be thrown in prison, she's a traitor, and all that. I said, well, I don't really necessarily agree with that. she is a constitutionalist, and pretty much if you look at her record since she's been in the Supreme Court, I mean that's the way she's ruled. Is from a constitutional point of view, her they write opinions, and after they make a ruling, they'll write an opinion why they did it, and all that, why they went the way they did. And I just basically told people, I said, well, I think the only reason she didn't is because she wants it to play out through the normal process. I mean, he has a right to appeal now that they have, found him guilty and then sentenced, convicted him. Then he has the right to an appeal, and so he's going to appeal it, and it's going to go up to the New York appeals court. And and the thing about these appeals courts is a lot of people don't know this. They think it's just 3 judges, but there's actually, I think, like 18 or 19 judges on the Court of Appeals. Now, they just usually seat 3 of them on the bench to rule on cases and stuff, but you can request that all the justices, come out on it. I forgot what they call it. They got a name for it, tranche or something like that. But anyway, he has the right to do that. And then if they rule against him, then he can appeal it up to the state. I think in New York they call it Superior Court, not Supreme Court. A lot of states it's a state Supreme Court, but I think in New York they call it the state Superior Court. And so he would have the right to appeal it up to there. And then if he don't get a reasonable ruling, then he can appeal it from there to the Supreme Court. And of course, I think that's all she was doing is she wants it to play through go through the process, which, if they could have went ahead and done it, but maybe she was looking at it, well, if they did that, then it would look biased. And I think they really do try to have the appearance of neutrality, not, unlike some of them that are, the liberal ones, they pretty much let they're leftists. They don't make no bones about it. They want to be activist judges, and really you cannot, if you want to have a true system of justice that is blind, then you cannot make rulings based on your political bias. You have to rule based on constitutionality of it, based on the law. And so I think that there's some that really try to do that, and I think she's one of them, and they're mistakenly railing against her, and that they shouldn't do it. And I made that kind of, I just made my position on it. I put it out there, and not that I'm smarter than anybody or anything, but I think that's one of the things that we are called to be. We're called to be light, and we're, when people are doing that, they're railing against these peoples and stuff. We need to try to bring some sanity, some, righteous thought into it, some reason. I've talked about reasoning, and that's one of the things that has to be corrected in us, and that can only be done by Yahweh Elohim through Yahushua and the Ruach HaKodesh. They're the ones that are getting our minds corrected, getting our reasoning corrected, and so that's where this kind of thing comes in, is that we can be voices of reason among all of this chaos and all of this wrong reasoning. People are just so quick to jump on, hang them and hang them high, I mean, that's kind of the way it is, put them in jail, and I'm like, wait a minute, man, you don't know why they made that choice. And of course my thinking is, again, reasoning, is that, she's ruling based on what she believes is the constitutionality of it, what the law. The law is that there's a process. You go to a court, and if they find you guilty or, find against you, like in a civilian civil law case, like a lawsuit or whatever, then you have the right to appeal it. and you can appeal it up there, and then you have a right to appeal it from there up to the next court, and from there up to the next court, all the way up to the Supreme Court. But it is a process, and of course, a lot of people make a lot of money off of it. But that's just the way we've agreed. We've settled on having our legal system set up. And so, if she's trying to, if her reasoning is that it needs to follow the process, and then we'll rule on it. We can't just make a ruling. You come up here and say throw this out, and of course we really haven't heard it. We haven't looked at all of the information. We haven't looked at the trial transcripts and stuff like that. I mean, we can't just say okay, we're just kicking it out. And and of course you can say, well, I'm sure they've been following it, and all that, but they really probably haven't been following it that close. They probably just hear the and they probably don't believe anything the mainstream media says either. I'm sure they probably have sources where they hear the scuttlebutt, that's going on. And so we can use these platforms. I mean, just because, Elon Musk or whatever, like I said, I can't see in any man's heart or whatever. I mean, you can kind of look at some of the stuff they do. He's a technocrat. But if we can use that same platform without being censored, like on here, I mean, I've had 4 of my videos took down on here because it's, censorship. So if I can go but I have to be careful about what I say, and it has to be it has to be something that is reason, something that is from a point of reasoning. Not just hang them and hang them high. I mean, you can't do that. That's not right. But we can, we have a voice. We again, the Father, again, he's the one that allowed this system that we're in. He and us to have freedom of speech and all that. So we need to exercise it, but we need to exercise it through reason and restraint. Don't go off on the handle and start barking at people, threatening people, railing against people, and all that kind of stuff. We need to try to be voices of reason, and hopefully might be able to reach somebody. Somebody that would have went off and I mean, because I've seen a lot of just off the deep end kind of stuff on there, man. I mean, so, I just go right on by it. I don't even want to read it or hear it. But it's also a source where we can kind of get some information, and we can pray over it, and what is right here, what is the right thing going on here, is this true? I mean, we have to question stuff and not go blindly into the night. I mean, we need to question and pray about things, and but not all of that, but to stay informed. To stay informed about what's going on around us. To be vigilant. Keep our head on the swivel. Because if you're a man and you have a family, you have a responsibility to take care of and protect your family, and to try to keep them from harm. And so if you don't know what's going on around you, if you just go along, with blinders on, then you're going to have trouble, and you're going to bring trouble on yourself and on your family. We need to be men. We need to be the heads of our homes. And we need to live an example of righteousness. And be providers. And be protectors of our families. And, with all prayer and supplication to Elohim, to be with us and to guide us and to help us to understand what we need to do in these troubling times that we're living in so that we can be providers, that we can be protectors of our family and our homes. And to know when, like he told the Talmudim, when you see these things begin to happen, flee to the hills of Judea. Because there may come a time, folks, when we have to flee. We may have to go underground or whatever. We don't know. We don't know what tomorrow presents. But, again, we need to submit to them that are in authority over us unless they're trying to get us to do something that is a sin against Elohim. Then we just don't do it. I mean, we don't come out and start, cussing them and railing at them and all that. We just say, hey, I'm not going to bow down before your gods. I serve Yahuwah Elohim and Elohim alone. So that's what we need to understand about being submissive to those who are in authority over us. And you can believe that the reason we get what we get is because he's putting them over us so that we can, as a little bit of a form of chastisement, and to let us know that if you continue to live the way you're living and doing the way you're doing, it's not only going to be this, but it's going to be a lot worse. Basically telling people to repent. And that includes us. When he says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and repent of their wickedness, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins and heal their land. He's talking to us. The converted, the believer. So we need to be repented up, as I always say, and walking on that straight and narrow path, following Yahushua, and listening to the Ruach HaKodesh through our conscience, folks, because that's how he speaks to us, is through our conscience. And then we'll be all right. We will be doing what he has commanded us to do. And of course, and we need to fulfill the law of love, as Paul was saying there in Romans 13. And so with that, I hope that all you folks will be blessed. I love you. Thank you for joining me on these here little studies, because this is much for my benefit as it is yours. And because I need to hear these things. I read them. I read the Bible every day. I try to, that's something I make myself do even when I don't necessarily feel like it. I still do it, and I pray, and I try to make sure, and I'm admonishing you. Pray for those who are in authority over you. Pray for those who are, blind and caught up in false religions and stuff. Pray for the brethren and the sisters. Pray for, and pray for peace. And as I always say, be good Bereans. Study the scriptures daily. Go read these scriptures for yourself. And, meditate on it. What does it mean? What does it mean for me? And because ultimately we all are going to have to stand before judgment, and we're going to have to stand there alone and give an account of all the things that we've done in this body. And so we want to try to, I've made many mistakes. You know, and the scripture tells us, live your life in such a way as at the end you have no regrets. Well, I've got regrets and about things I've done, but I can't go back in the past and change them. But I can change how I do now and you know, turn from that stuff and go on the straight and narrow path and do that and not turn to the right or to the left. And I've had temptations. I mean, I'm not going to mention no names or nothing like that, but since I just got on this platform, I had somebody, and of course it's an old picture of me there when I was a little bit younger, not that much younger, but and I had long hair and all, and so this person followed, followed me or whatever. That's what they call it on there, following somebody or whatever. And she began to come on to me on there, or whatever, and so I had to tell her, hey, I'm a married man, I'm a Christian, and I can't be involved in anything like that, and of course she come back, she says, I really appreciate your honesty, and I told her, I said, I hope you have a blessed day. And she come back and said, I really appreciate your honesty. I'm single and I'm lonely, and I can understand that, and she said, I respect all, that you, really, I really appreciate your honesty, and I respect that, and I respect your beliefs, and but I would still like to be your friend. And I said, well, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I would like to be your friend too. I don't want to, but I like to set boundaries, and let people know. I mean, of course, Hasatan, I mean, he's like, hey, man, I mean, kind of, you just, temptation. And I'm like, no, no. And the scripture tells us, that he will not let us be tempted above that which we can stand. But with every temptation, he will provide a way of escape. And so, he helped me. I mean, and delivered me, made a way of escape. And, I hate it for people that, are lonesome and single and today, for people, men and women, trying to find anybody that wants to do what's right and wants to walk in the ways of Elohim, they're hard to find. A good man or a good woman. And so I'll pray for her. I'll pray for her that she will find somebody that will love her and treat her good, and that will be live right. That will be a follower of Yahushua. And and because I told her, I said, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to hurt you or nothing like that. I mean, I hope I didn't do anything that encouraged you to believe that I was available or anything, because I didn't. I mean, I never done anything to, she just said hello, and I said hello. I mean, I don't want to be rude to people, but at the same time, you have to, set your boundaries right up front. You can't kind of like lead people on into thinking, well, maybe there's a possibility we can get together or get to know each other. No, you got to set your boundaries, and letting people know where you stand, what you believe, and what we can be friends. There's nothing wrong with being a man being a friend to a woman. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But you have to have your boundaries. You have to let them know up front, where you're at. Be honest. Don't be deceptive and all that kind of stuff. And so I did, and I got no problem with it. I mean, if she wants to talk and needs somebody to talk to, that maybe she's down or something, I mean, I'm all there for that. I don't. I mean, we should be there to help anybody. I mean, because there's a lot of problem with that kind of stuff. I mean, people committing suicide and everything else because of depression and anxiety, and and so if you can help somebody, and maybe even it might even move into that I can lead her to Yahushua, that Elohim will draw her and that by hearing, the gospel, she might come to Yahushua and be converted. So that's how I look at it, is an opportunity to reach somebody. And so, I'm not going to go on and start preaching at her or nothing. I just would, like I said before about how I will try to frame conversations that kind of will lead into it, and then I can begin to, point out some scriptures or something that, do you have a Bible? Well, you might want to go look at these scriptures and read them and see what it says about his love and the things that he has done to make a provision for our fall and to redeem us back unto him. So, I look at it as an opportunity. And so, just kind of throwing that out there, that, for people that have questions about that kind of thing, how would you, how do you deal with it? How do you respond to it? There you go. Be straight up, honest, and upfront. We're called to be light, and light is truth. We got to be truthful, and so and then we can use that as a way to reach people. It's another people can use these platforms. It comes down to good and evil again, folks. You can use them for good or you can use them for evil. I choose to use it as a thing for good and for righteousness. And to, make my voice heard as to what I believe is right. And, based on this right here, folks. KJV. And I'm not saying this is absolutely perfect. I don't believe there's any translation of the scripture into English that is perfect. But I'm not a scholar in Hebrew or Greek, and so I can get a concordance like I have and go and I can search out a word if I'm not sure about what the Hebrew were trying to convey. Then I can go look it up and get an idea. But at my age, maybe if I'd have started trying to learn Hebrew when I was a kid or something, it might have been real easy back then. But now I have a hard enough time keeping track of the English language. But anyway, folks, I'm going to call it a day, and I really appreciate all you folks. I love you, and again, I appreciate you watching these little videos. I hope that they bless you in some way, that if nothing else, they get you to thinking and they get you to questioning. Everything. We have to question everything that we have ever heard or been taught. All of it. I've had to come to that conclusion that, man, I can't really believe anything, that we've been told about the past, about anything. It's just the deception is so deep and so great that you got to question every single thing, and then you got to research it to see, about the time, about events, about where, and I come to find out about something that I never even thought about before, just as a side note here, about volcanoes. That there is not anywhere in any of these ancient historical records of there ever being a volcano erupting before 79 AD. Pompeii or whatever. I mean, never. There's no recording anywhere prior to that of volcanoes. Just something to think about. And I'm talking about in all the cultures, like the Mayan and the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Chinese and all. None of them has ever had anything in their historical writings that says anything about a volcanic eruption prior to, I think it's 69 or 79 AD, which would have been around the time of tribulation. It's crazy, folks. It's crazy. But, I mean, something for you to think about and look into. Do a little homework, a little research. But anyway, I love you. See you again on the next Shabbat, if Yahuwah is willing.